When you stop chasing them, something powerful begins to happen, not just around you, but deep within you. At first, there's a silence that used to scare you, a silence that felt like punishment, rejection, or abandonment. But now, that silence isn't weakness. It becomes a statement. And what you'll find is that silence speaks louder than your constant effort ever did. He notices it. Maybe not right away. Maybe he scrolls past your stories without thinking. Maybe he assumes you'll be back like always. But something is different this time. There are no late night texts, no just checking in messages, no subtle excuses to see him. The attention he was used to is gone, and it confuses him. It bothers him. It makes him wonder, why isn't she chasing me anymore? That curiosity, that disturbance in his usual pattern, is the beginning of a psychological shift, one he'll never admit, but one he'll deeply feel. Because men get used to being chased, not because they deserve it, but because we train them to expect it. When you pour your energy into someone who gives you breadcrumbs, you condition them to think their bare minimum is enough. But when you stop, truly stop, that conditioning breaks, and suddenly the silence becomes uncomfortable. The ego starts to itch. He may act unbothered on the outside, but trust me, he's curious. Your silence creates space, and that space forces him to sit with something he's been avoiding, himself. He starts asking questions, replaying old moments, wondering if you've moved on. And what haunts him isn't just the silence, it's the mystery behind it. Is she done with me? Has she found someone else? Did I really lose her? Now here's the deeper part, the part he'll never tell anyone. He starts to realize how much he enjoyed your attention, your energy, your softness, your effort, but it's not there anymore. And because he didn't value it when it was offered freely, he can't access it now that it's gone. He doesn't know how to get it back. And that's what drives him crazy. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about making him suffer. This is about you reclaiming your self-worth, about recognizing that your value was never in your pursuit, it was in your presence. Your love isn't something that should ever be chased after someone. When you step back, when you reclaim your space, when you let the silence speak for you, it unsettles everything he thought he knew about control. Let him pretend he doesn't care. Let him post like he's unbothered. But know this, your absence will whisper in ways your presence never did. It will echo in his quiet moments, in the places he thought you'd always be, and in the texts he expects but never gets. And that silence, it will haunt him. Now stay still and stay growing. When you stop chasing him, something very subtle but very powerful starts to shift inside him. At first, he might laugh it off. He might even play it cool like nothing's changed. But trust this, something has. See, the chase gave him certainty. Your messages, your attention, your energy, they were confirmation that he mattered in your world. They were validation. And when that validation disappears, he doesn't just lose your attention, he loses his reflection. Because for some men, they don't really know who they are without your gaze. Your pursuit made him feel wanted, desired, needed. He may not have said it out loud. He may have even acted like it was too much. But on a psychological level, it filled something in him, something fragile. And when that disappears, it leaves behind a vacuum, a void, a silence that is louder than words. Now here's the part that really starts to haunt him. The narrative in his mind begins to shift. Before, he was the one in control. He was the one choosing how close or far he let you come. But now that you're no longer trying, he doesn't know what role to play anymore. Who is he if you're not chasing? If you're not texting, if you're not reaching out, explaining yourself, trying to fix things, trying to prove your worth? Suddenly, he starts to question if maybe, just maybe, you were the prize all along. And that's where the haunting begins. Not because you're gone, but because you've changed the story. You've taken your power back without even announcing it. He starts noticing the absence in the little things. He opens his phone out of habit, expecting your name. He checks social media, scanning your stories, wondering what you're up to, and more importantly, who you're with. His curiosity grows. But here's the thing, he can't show it. His pride won't let him, so instead, he suppresses it, buries it, and pretends. But just because he pretends doesn't mean he doesn't feel it. Oh, he does. Late at night, in the silence, in the spaces where your voice used to be, in the moments where he wants to reach out but doesn't know how without admitting he lost something valuable. What really starts to haunt him isn't just that you stopped chasing. It's that you didn't make a scene. You didn't beg. You didn't post some dramatic message. You just quietly pulled back. That silence, that's power. That absence, that's presence. And the more he sits with it, the more it begins to affect him. He may not realize it now, or even weeks from now, but at some point, when everything is quiet, when he's alone with himself, he'll feel it, and he won't know how to name it. He won't even understand why it hurts, but it will hurt. Because losing someone who loved you deeply, but finally chose herself, isn't just loss, it's regret. And regret doesn't knock, it lingers. Stay still. Let the silence do the talking. When you no longer chase him and start focusing completely on your own growth, something powerful begins to happen. You stop orbiting his world and start becoming the center of your own. You begin investing that energy you once gave so freely into yourself, into your healing, your peace, your elevation. And here's what most people don't realize. That kind of inner shift, that kind of transformation is loud, even in silence. It echoes in ways he cannot ignore. At first, he might think you're just trying to make him jealous. He might scroll past your photos or updates and assume it's a phase, a performance. But the more you glow from the inside out, the more he begins to understand it's not for him. It's not about getting his attention. It's not about proving your worth. It's about reclaiming your own. When a woman starts healing, when she starts building herself emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and even physically, there is nothing more magnetic. You don't have to say anything. Your presence shifts. Your boundaries become stronger. Your energy feels different. You walk into a room and it's no longer about trying to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. Now, for the man who was used to being chased, this is unsettling. It disrupts the dynamic. He no longer feels needed. He no longer feels in control. And that's when the real internal struggle begins. See, he expected you to fall apart without him. He expected you to come back. But instead, you're rising. And he begins to compare. Whether he admits it or not, he looks at the way you're moving now, and he measures it against what he thought you'd become. And when he sees you smiling, not performing, but genuinely happy, he's confused. Because your joy no longer requires his permission. Your peace no longer includes his chaos. And that's the real torment. He's watching you become everything he never truly appreciated. He's witnessing you become the woman he'll never be able to reach in the same way again. Not because you're bitter, not because you're punishing him, but because you've grown. You've expanded beyond the version of yourself that needed his approval. And here's what makes it haunt him even more. You didn't just move on. You evolved quietly, powerfully. You didn't make announcements. You just changed. And now your absence is not only a memory, it's a mirror that forces him to see his own choices. A mirror that shows him what he lost while he was playing games. And deep down, he knows. He didn't lose you because someone else took you. He lost you because he didn't recognize your value when you gave it to him freely. Now, every time he sees you thriving, it will trigger something. Every time he hears your name, it'll carry weight, not because you hurt him, but because you healed. And he didn't expect that. So let him wonder. Let him sit in the silence. Because your transformation is not about proving anything to him. It's about proving everything to yourself. Let that be enough. When you stop chasing him, you stop feeding his ego. And that's when the real psychological unraveling begins. You see, for some men, it's not love they miss. It's the power, the control, the validation they get from knowing you'll always show up even when they don't deserve it. And when that supply gets cut off, when your attention becomes scarce instead of automatic, that absence isn't just felt, it's feared. He may act unbothered, he may post like nothing's changed, but the silence you've created, it's loud in his world because your presence was a mirror. It reminded him of who he could be if he chose growth. It reminded him of the love he was offered without conditions. And now he has to sit in a room with his own reflection and no escape from it. Let's be honest. He never truly processed what you meant to him while you were chasing. You were too available, too forgiving, too consistent. And unfortunately, familiarity often breeds entitlement. He thought your energy was endless, that your efforts would never run dry. But when you pulled back without warning, without explanation, he started to spiral. Not publicly, of course. No, he keeps it together in front of others. But it eats at him in the quiet moments. This shift, this loss of your attention isn't just emotional. It's psychological. He starts questioning himself. Why isn't she texting me first anymore? Why isn't she reacting to my stories? Why does she look like she's doing better without me? And that last one, that's the one that stings. Because it forces him to realize he may have been the reason you were hurting in the first place. You see, when you chase a man, you make him your center. You orbit around his needs, his mood, his availability. But when you stop, you realign your life, you return to yourself, and your life becomes about purpose, not performance. That's what begins to haunt him, not your distance, but your indifference. He knows now that he's no longer the priority, not because you hate him, but because you finally love yourself more. And once that shift happens, there's no going back to the version of you that needed his bare minimum to feel whole. He'll test you. He'll send subtle signals. Maybe a random, like a vague message, a song that reminds him of you. But it's not because he's changed. It's because he misses the version of himself that felt important when you were chasing him. He wants the hit, the fix, the ego boost. But what he doesn't realize is that the woman who once gave that to him, she's no longer available because she's finally available to herself. And that's the moment it all clicks for him, that you were the real one, the rare one, the kind of woman who showed up with love, patience, and loyalty. And now you're no longer chasing, you're evolving quietly, powerfully. And he'll never be able to reach you from the place he refused to grow out of. And that truth, that's what drives him insane. There comes a moment after you stop chasing him where he starts to remember things that never mattered to him before until now. The way you used to light up when he walked into the room, the sound of your laugh, the little things you did that no one else noticed, packing his favorite snack, sending that check and text on hard days, listening when no one else had the patience. Those things at the time didn't mean much to him. They were just there, constant, reassuring, but now they echo in the silence you've left behind. And the irony is, when you were offering all of that, he couldn't see it, not clearly. He was too caught up in being chased, too busy enjoying the comfort of knowing you'd always be there. But now that you've pulled back, now that your energy is no longer freely given, he begins to feel the void, and not just feel it, but wrestle with it. You see, this shift triggers something deeper, something subconscious. For the first time, he has to confront what he took for granted. And that's a painful realization. Because when a man loses access to a woman who loved him sincerely, who cared without keeping score, it doesn't just bruise his ego, it shakes his identity. But he'll start wondering, why did I feel so secure when she was around? Why do I feel unsettled now that she's not chasing? That's when it hits him. It wasn't just your presence, it was your consistency, your belief in him, your emotional investment. All those things he dismissed are now the very things he craves. And he doesn't even know how to ask for them back. Because deep down, he knows. He didn't earn your return. This is where the haunting begins. Not with anger, not with drama, but with memory. Memory has a way of catching people off guard. It sneaks up on them in moments they least expect. When he's driving home alone, when he hears your favorite song, when someone asks about you and he can't explain why he still hesitates to speak your name, you become a ghost, not because you're gone, but because you're untouchable now. You're not who you were. You're not available the way you once were. And maybe he'll try to reach out, a message, a casual, hey, how are you? But the truth is, you're not in the same place anymore. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That version of you who once fought for him, she had to leave so this new version could be born. So now he watches from a distance, wondering if he was ever enough, wondering why he didn't see your value when it was in front of him every single day. That reflection doesn't go away, because the longer you stay silent, the louder your absence becomes. And that's the beauty of no longer chasing. You give him the gift of reflection. You give yourself the freedom of peace. And while he's busy wrestling with what he lost, you're finally free to become all that he never appreciated. That's what haunts him. When you stop chasing him, something powerful happens inside you. It's not just about getting over him, it's about stepping into a version of yourself that was buried under constant emotional effort. You start to feel lighter, but not because he's gone, because the weight of proving your worth to someone who never saw it has finally been lifted. That shift, that energy, that's magnetic. And he feels it, even if he can't explain it. Men are more intuitive than they let on. They might not always articulate it, but they sense energy. They notice when the tone of your voice changes, when your responses get shorter, when your presence becomes less predictable. And when that shift happens, when you stop chasing, he suddenly feels a space that was once filled with your attention. That space becomes empty. And that emptiness becomes uncomfortable. But the real sting, the part that starts to eat at him, is watching you glow without him. Because here's what often happens. You start to laugh again. You begin reconnecting with friends. You find joy in things you once sacrificed. Your posture changes. Your confidence slowly rebuilds. You wear that outfit he never noticed and feel good in it. You speak with a new calmness, a self-assuredness that doesn't need validation. And whether he sees you in person, through social media, or hears about you from mutual friends, he can feel the change. You're no longer available in the same way. You're not waiting, you're not hoping, you're living. And that's what makes the silence so deafening for him. Because now, every time he sees you smiling without him, he realizes you were always capable of this version of yourself. He just wasn't the one who unlocked it. You were. This is the part most people don't talk about, the internal power you reclaim. When you stop chasing, you begin attracting. Not just men, but opportunities, peace, alignment. Because your energy is no longer leaking towards someone who didn't water it back. It's being redirected, refocused. And that glow he sees, that's not revenge, that's self-love. That's evolution. And it terrifies him. You see, the man who once thought you needed him to be happy now sees that you're just fine, maybe even better, without him. That realization is painful because most people don't want to confront the fact that they were the reason the connection didn't grow. So instead, they watch from afar. They say nothing. But inside, that shift is driving them mad. You didn't have to yell. You didn't have to beg. You didn't have to prove a point. You just had to rise quietly, gracefully, authentically. And that's what he never expected. That's what leaves a lasting mark. There's something incredibly powerful, almost haunting, about emotional silence. Not the kind that's used to manipulate or punish, but the kind that radiates peace, clarity, and a quiet refusal to engage in what no longer serves you. When you stop chasing him and you no longer respond the way you used to, he doesn't just notice, he feels it deeply. And it begins to stir something inside of him he didn't know was there. You see, emotional silence is different from distance. Distance can be created physically, blocked numbers, unfollowed accounts, miles between you. But emotional silence, that's when he knows you could reach out, but choose not to. That's when he realizes that your silence isn't absence, it's presence, your presence with yourself. It's not that you're gone, it's that you've returned to yourself. And that shift is louder than any words you could have said. Because before, your energy was constantly pouring into the relationship, into him. Every text, every call, every second guess, every compromise. That was your emotional currency. And when you go silent, when you stop investing that currency, he suddenly has to sit with his own emotional debt. All the words he didn't say, all the effort he didn't make, all the love he didn't reciprocate, and it starts catching up with him. This kind of silence exposes a man because it removes the noise, the drama, the back and forth, and it leaves only the truth. And for someone who was used to being chased, who was used to being the center of your emotional world, that truth is unsettling. He begins to replay the conversations. He starts to question if he misread your worth. And the more you remain still, composed, and emotionally grounded, the louder that silence becomes in his mind. What he doesn't realize is that your silence was never an accident, it was a decision. A conscious, intentional decision to protect your peace. It wasn't about making him chase you back. It wasn't about playing games. It was about recognizing that you deserve more than one-sided effort. And once a woman fully embraces that realization, the game is over. He might check your profile. He might try to spark casual conversation. He might even act indifferent. But inside, the silence is working on him. It's stirring reflection. It's challenging his ego. It's making him wonder what happened to the version of you that was always available. And the truth is, she didn't disappear, she just evolved. She stopped giving energy where it wasn't valued. And that is the moment that begins to drive him insane, because he can't reach you the way he used to, not because you're unavailable, but because you've changed the frequency. You're no longer emotionally accessible to inconsistency. You've upgraded your standards, your self-worth, and your peace of mind. In that silence, you are saying everything he needs to hear and more, without a word spoken. And that, right there, is the real power. There's a certain mystery that surrounds a woman who doesn't explain herself, who doesn't defend her absence, who doesn't announce her healing, post about her peace, or broadcast her evolution. She simply changes. She simply detaches. She simply stops chasing, and something deep within him starts unraveling. You see, when you used to chase him, your energy made him feel important, validated, pursued. Even if he acted like he didn't care, he felt something, knowing that someone was always checking in, always hoping, always trying. And in his mind, it gave him a kind of control. Not because he was necessarily malicious, but because he never had to consider life without your attention. He took it as a given, as a guarantee. But then one day, It stops. You stop checking his stories. You stop replying with urgency. You stop wondering what he's doing, who he's with, and whether he's thinking about you. And instead of chaos, you give him calm. Not the kind of calm that says, I'm waiting for you to fix this. No, the kind of calm that says, I've already fixed it inside myself. And that shift is terrifying because most men don't expect the emotional roles to change. They don't expect the one who once loved loudly to suddenly go silent. They don't expect the one who forgave too much to suddenly draw boundaries. And the moment he realizes you're no longer emotionally available, not in anger, not in spite, but in peace, he loses his grip. He may scroll through his phone at night, tempted to send a message just to see if you'll still respond. He may replay old texts, trying to remember when exactly he lost you. And more than that, he starts to notice how different your energy feels. You're not bitter. You're not loud. You're just gone. And here's the real twist. Your silence doesn't just make him miss you, it makes him question himself. It creates a mirror. Suddenly, the blame he used to place on you doesn't hold up anymore. He begins to feel what you felt, the confusion, the emptiness, the waiting, the overthinking. And with no one to absorb that energy anymore, it reflects right back to him. That's the psychological shift he never saw coming. Because he thought you'd always be there. He thought your care was permanent. He thought you wouldn't change. But what he forgot was that even the most loving woman has a threshold. Even the most loyal heart has a limit. And once she hits that threshold, once she stops chasing, the story changes. And what makes it even more haunting is that you never explain. You don't write long paragraphs. You don't try to convince him of your worth. You don't try to make him see the value he missed. You just rise, you elevate, and you let the silence do the talking. And trust me, silence speaks, it screams, it echoes, it lingers, especially when it comes from someone who used to give their all. And it's not punishment, it's protection. Protection of your energy, your mind, your soul. And that is the moment when he realizes maybe he lost something he'll never find again. There's a strange thing that happens when a woman stops trying. When she no longer tries to prove her worth, explain her intentions, or fight for her place in someone's life, something begins to shift, not just in her world, but in his. Especially if he never expected her to walk away with dignity. He underestimated her strength. He misread her silence. And now, the silence is louder than anything she ever said. See, here's the truth most people don't talk about. Men often confuse presence with permanence. Just because you were available, just because you showed up consistently, just because you were willing to love through the chaos, they assumed you'd always be there, that somehow, no matter what, you'd still come back, still check on them, still reach out and try to mend what they broke. But what happens when that woman stops showing up? It doesn't hit him all at once. It creeps in slowly, like a room that grows colder hour by hour after someone shuts off the heat. At first, he barely notices. He thinks you're just giving him space. Then he begins to realize it's not space, it's distance. And not the kind that begs for a bridge to be built. It's the kind that says the road is closed. When a woman who used to chase stops chasing, the dynamic flips. He starts to wonder what you're doing, who you're becoming, why your name doesn't pop up anymore, why the woman who once checked in now checks out. And that absence, it becomes a presence, takes up space in his mind, it challenges his assumptions, and slowly it begins to haunt him. And here's what's even deeper. It's not about revenge. It's not about making him suffer. It's about you finally choosing yourself. When you stop trying to change him, save him, or make him see your value, you redirect that energy inward, and the woman who used to lose herself for love finds herself in solitude. And you know what happens next? That self-respect, that confidence, that calm strength. It becomes radiant. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it simply is. It changes the energy in every room you enter. And whether he admits it or not, he feels it, he notices it, and more importantly, he misses it. Because he didn't just lose a woman, he lost a version of love that was rare, loyal, unconditional, until it had to be withdrawn. And now he's left wondering, replaying, regretting. But by the time he realizes what he had, you're no longer looking back. And that is when it truly starts to drive him insane. Not your anger, not your words, but your absence wrapped in peace. The final shift, the one that really breaks him, isn't loud, it's not dramatic, it doesn't come with a long speech or an emotional breakdown. No, it's much quieter than that. It's when you move on without needing closure. That's the part that messes with his mind the most. Because for the longest time, he thought he had time to play around, time to keep you half closed, half committed, time to figure himself out while expecting you to wait in emotional limbo. But when you no longer chase him, when you no longer reach out, when you stop needing explanations or validation, he realizes that you've closed the chapter without his permission. And that right there, that's when it begins to sink in. You didn't need to scream. You didn't need to prove anything. Your peace said everything. You see, closure is something people often chase after a relationship ends, thinking it'll help them heal. But the real power comes when you stop needing it. When you realize that his inability to give you clarity isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of his limitations. When you accept that you may never get the apology, the truth, or the acknowledgement, and you don't wait for it anymore. You don't postpone your healing on the off chance that he finally decides to explain why he did what he did. That's the moment your energy shifts permanently. He begins to feel something strange. At first, he can't name it. It's this tightness in his chest when your name comes up. It's the way he hesitates before checking his phone, hoping for a message that will never arrive. It's how he replays your last words over and over again, trying to find a deeper meaning. Because now he realizes you left nothing behind. No loose ends, no final message, no room to return. You see, when a woman moves on without closure, it's a form of self-respect that speaks louder than any explanation ever could. It says, you no longer have access to me, and he feels it. Not in the big moments, but in the small ones. Like when he hears a song you used to love, or when someone mentions your name and he has to act like it doesn't sting, or when he tries to connect with someone new and realizes they don't make him feel the way you did. You moved on, and you didn't turn it into a performance. You didn't make it a show. You just became unavailable emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that absence, that silence, that peace, that's what drives him insane. Because now he has to live with the question that has no answer. What if I didn't lose her? What if I pushed her away and she never looked back? And you keep rising, quietly, powerfully, and completely at peace.